Most beginners lose money in the same spots every session because they do not know when to build a pot and when the action is telling them to get out. My name is Brandon Sligh, and I am a professional poker player and coach who has been winning for 7 straight years. In this video, I will show you 4 basic poker strategies that come up in almost every low stakes game so you can sit down at any table and win. The first strategy is going to be shown with this 2-5 hand where we are $800 effective. It folds to me in cutoff and I look down at King Queen of Spades. I raise to $15, the big blind calls, and we go heads up to the flop. It comes Queen 8-3 rainbow. My opponent checks and I do not want to check back just because I only have one pair. Worse queens, 8x, and some straight draws can still call, so I bet $10 or about 30% of the pot. I am not betting only because I raised pre-flop. I am betting because we are very high up in our range with top pair and we are more than happy to build a pot. My opponent calls, we go to the turn and it's the 7 of clubs, bringing in a backdoor club draw and giving some hands more straight possibilities. They check again. Can my opponent have 2 pair? Yes, but this is such a narrow portion of their range. When there are many worse hands that can still call, you must be comfortable finding a double barrel with top pair almost best kicker. Always keep in mind we are way ahead of most pairs of queens and also second pair that wants to get a bit sticky and not fold. I bet $35 or about 2/3 of the pot. My opponent calls again. We are headed to the river and it comes the deuce of spades. It does not complete the club draw or bring in an obvious straight, and my opponent checks for a third time. Before checking back, I ask one question. Are there still worse hands that can call me that continues from the flop and the turn? Yes, a missed draw cannot put money in, but a pair can still find a call here. Do not be scared of a check raise in this spot. You must be willing to go for it, and this brings in the first strategy. Bet top pair for value, but fold when your opponents start showing a lot of aggression. I will bet the river for $80 and my opponent puts in the call. I turn over King Queen of Spades for top pair, and then my opponent shows Queen 9 of Hearts. If I check one of those streets, Queen 9 gets the showdown without having to call all 3 streets. The board stayed clean and my opponent only called without any aggression, which is why 3 value bets made sense in this hand. Now, what if the action changes and our opponent shows a lot of aggression? Let's see what to do at a 1-3 game where we are $600 effective. I have ace-queen offsuit and hijack and I raise to $15. It folds to the big blind, who has been playing fairly passive, and they put in a call. We go heads up to a flop of Queen 8-5, 2 clubs. I have top pair with the best kicker, but this board has more draws than the first one, so we must keep this in mind. My opponent checks, and I bet $20, or about 2/3 of the pot. My opponent calls. The turn comes the 7 of diamonds. They check again, and it is a bit connected, but we can still get called by many hands that we are ahead of. A straight does not always complete on this card, and at least it is not the 7 of clubs. I will bet the turn, making it $50 to go. My opponent immediately check raises in less than 2 seconds to $185. At 1-3, a large immediate turn check raise from a typical passive player is almost never a bluff. With this hand playing out this way with such heavy aggression on the turn, they now have all the straights, 2 pair, and sets. The goal is to never put them on one hand, but a range of hands. Once a passive player takes this line, most of the hands they show up with are ahead of my top pair, top kicker. I would have to put in another $135 to continue, but the money already in the pot is not coming back. I am comfortable folding because I do not need to pay another $135 just to see what the action already told me due to the player being passive and the aggression. In spots like this, you may believe the $50 bet was the mistake, but it is not. Calling the check raise because I cannot let go of top pair would be the mistake. Stop saying, I have top pair, and try to listen and think about what the action is telling you. The difficult part with top pair is knowing when worse hands can still call and when the action is telling you to stop putting money in. That is why I made the low stakes poker blueprint a free guide with 100 rules I have used to win for 7 straight years. Scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the pinned comment and I'll send it to you for free. The next strategy is going to be shown when I am dealt ace-9 of diamonds on the button. We are playing 1-3 and the action folds to cutoff, who limps for $3. I am on the button with ace-9 of diamonds. Putting in the $3 call may feel harmless because the hand is suited and I have position. The problem is I am allowing small blind and big blind to see a cheap flop, and I am giving one of them the opportunity to raise and make me fold before the flop even comes out if it's an extremely big size. Instead of over limping, I raise to $18. Both players in the blinds fold. The original limper is going to fold as well. I win the $7 already in the middle without seeing a flop or paying rake. Sometimes people always focus on the big pots without realizing how much these small pots add up. In this spot, somebody who open limps is going to be weak here 99% of the time. Weak does not mean they always have 7 deuce offsuit. It means their range is capped because most players raise the hands they feel best about. That gives every player behind them an opportunity to apply pressure and take over the action. The second strategy is to attack limpers instead of limping yourself. Sometimes everyone folds, you collect the money, and you move on to the next hand. Sometimes everyone is not going to fold before the flop, so the next hand shows what changes when there is more than one limper and one of them decides to call. We are still playing 1-3 and are $600 effective. Under the gun limps for $3 and another player in middle position limps behind. I am in hijack with ace-10 of spades. If there were only one limper, 5 times or so of the limp is a good in-position starting point. That would make the raise at least $15. But this number is not locked. There are 2 limpers in the pot, and this is a loose game where players have been calling too many raises, so I make it $24 or 8 times the big blind. Cutoff, button, small blind, and big blind fold. Under the gun calls, and the middle position limper folds. Instead of going 4 or 5 ways to the flop after putting in another $3, I have taken the bet and lead and created a heads up pot in position. We go heads up to a flop of King 7 deuce rainbow. My opponent checks. I did not pair my ace or 10, but this dry king high board is still a good situation for a small continuation bet. It is extremely good for my range, and I also can turn an ace, spade for a nut flush draw, or even a queen for a gutter to the best hand possible. The player who limp called has a lot of small pocket pairs, suited hands, and disconnected cards that miss this flop. I can bet small and put pressure on those hands without risking very much. I bet $18 or about 30% of the pot. My opponent folds and then turns over pocket threes. They limped because they wanted to see a cheap flop, called because they hoped to make a set, and then had a difficult time continuing when the king came. They had third pair, and I kept betting. The $24 raise is not a magic number. Start around 5 times the limp in position, add more for each additional limper, and increase it again when the table keeps calling. Pay attention to the players behind you because an aggressive player can still 3-bet. If the original limper comes back with a limp re-raise, slow down because low stakes players are not taking that line light very often. The goal is to stop joining the limp pile and start taking over the aggression since it's a much easier situation to navigate. Knowing you should attack limpers is the easy part. Knowing which hands to use, how large to raise, and what to do when they call depends on the exact game you are playing. This is what I help players fix in my one-on-one coaching sessions. Scan the QR code or use the link in the pinned comment, and I will help you find the biggest leaks in your 1-3 or 2-5 game and build a plan you can use in your next session. The next strategy is going to come from the most profitable seat at the poker table. We are playing 2-5 or $700 effective, and the action folds to me on the button with Jack 7 of spades. From early position, this hand is going directly into the fold pile. On the button, the situation is completely different. Only the small blind and big blind remain, and if either player calls, I am going to act last after the flop. This allows me to play more hands without treating every suited hand at the table the same way. I raise to $15. The small blind folds and the big blind calls. The flop comes ace 8-3 rainbow. My opponent checks. Being on the button does not mean I have to bet every flop, but on this dry ace high board, after the big blind checks, I can bet only $10 and put pressure on all the hands that completely missed without risking much myself. If they have an ace, a strong 8, or decide to fight back, I can respond to that information while still being in position. I bet $10 and the big blind folds. These pots may look small, but they add up when you keep finding them every session. I open a hand that would have been a fold from most other positions and won without needing to make a pair. The next strategy is to use the button to play more hands for more profit. Opening wider is only one reason the button makes so much money. The next hand shows how acting last gives you information and options that are not available when you are first to act. We are playing 2-5 and are $900 effective. A player in low jack opens to $20 and the hijack calls. I am on the button with pocket sevens and put in the call. Small blind and big blind fold, so we go 3 ways to the flop. The deeper stacks matter because pocket sevens can make a set and win a much larger pot when somebody has a strong 1-pair or 2-pair hand. Position matters as well because I get to see what both players do before I have to make my decision on every street. The flop comes king 9-3 rainbow. The low jack checks and then hijack checks right after. I have a pair and some showdown value, so betting does not accomplish very much on this particular board. A king is not folding, a 9 may continue, and many of the hands I beat will fold to the first bet. I check behind and take the free turn card. Position lets me see another card without building the pot when worse hands are not calling often enough. The turn is the 7 of diamonds, giving me a set. Now, low jack bets $35, or about half of the pot, and hijack calls. Before I put in another chip, position has allowed me to see 2 important actions. One player chose to bet, and another player just called, showing their overall range is weak. If they had a strong hand, they would be raising themselves. This is not the time to slow play and hope someone bets the river for me. There are a lot of hands that will continue, most of them being a pair or a flush draw type holding. A lot of river cards can slow down the action, so I raise to $150. Low jack calls and hijack will be folding. We go to the river and it comes the 2 of clubs. My opponent checks and I need to make another bet with this run out. I will go for a bet of $275. If this player has a king that called the turn raise, the deuce did not change the strength of their hand. Checking back because I am worried they may have a higher set will leave too much value behind from the much larger group of other hands that can call. My opponent puts in the call. I turn over pocket sevens for a set, and then low jack shows king queen of hearts. They check the flop, bet the turn with their top pair, called my raise with it, and paid another $275 on the river. Turning a 7 helped, but position is what made the hand easier to play. I watched both players check the flop, saw a bet and call happen in front of me on the turn, and made every important decision after they acted. That does not make every pocket pair a call on the button. The stacks, players, and people left to act still matter. Playing more hands on the button only makes more money if you know when to keep the pot small and when to start building it. In this hand, position allowed me to do both. That is why I made the low stakes poker blueprint a free guide with 100 rules for the live low stakes spots that come up again and again. Scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the pinned comment and I'll send it to you for free. For the next strategy, we will start off with the strongest hand in poker. We are playing 2-5 and are $1,000 effective. Under the gun +1 opens to $20. Hijack calls, and I look down at pocket aces on the button. Some players call here because they do not want everybody to fold, or they want to trap and see if someone behind can re-raise for them. The problem is calling gives both opponents a cheap opportunity to see the flop, keeps the pot small, and may bring the blinds into the hand too. I am not waiting for someone else to build a pot for me. I 3-bet or re-raise to $100. The small blind and big blind fold. Under the gun +1 calls and hijack folds. So the 3-bet did two important things. It starts building the pot while I have the best start in hand, and it takes a hand that could have gone 4 ways and gets me heads up in position. We go to a flop of 10-6 deuce rainbow. My opponent checks. On this dry board, I am going to be ahead majority of the time, but I do not need to make a huge bet and force every worse hand to fold. Pocket pairs, a 10, straight draws, and even overcards and ace highs will continue to a small size. I bet $75 and my opponent will put in a call. The turn is the jack of hearts. The jack changes the board and brings in backdoor heart draws, but it is not a reason to shut down. We will still be ahead very often with pocket aces. My opponent checks. I would bet again on the turn for $250. They will put in a call. We go to the river and it's the 3 of diamonds. The backdoor heart draw misses and the only straight possible would be 5-4 suited, specifically hearts, because nobody would call the turn bet with any other 5-4 suited combination because they would only have a gutter to the straight. They check again. The earlier bets created the river spot I wanted. I do not have to choose an awkward river size because the amount left is already less than the pot. I go all in for $575 and my opponent puts in the call very quickly. I turn over pocket aces and they show pocket queens. The river shove did not create this pot by itself. The $100 re-raise and the earlier value bets are what made playing for the full $1,000 possible. The final rule is learning to maximize value with aces and kings. That does not mean putting your stack in on every board. It means continuing to build a pot on favorable runouts while the hands you beat are still willing to call. Even though we were 200 big blinds deep, it was still the perfect spot to go for it all. Pocket kings will show the same strategy in a different spot because this time I am out of position. We are playing 2-5 and are $600 effective, which is 120 big blinds. I am in cutoff with pocket kings and raise to $15. The button 3-bets to $45 and both blinds fold. Some players call here because they are worried about pocket aces or an ace coming on the flop. Both can happen, but calling lets the button control the size of the pot and misses value against all the worst hands willing to continue when we come over the top. I 4-bet to $150 and the button will put in a call. We go heads up to a flop of Queen 7-3, 2 spades. This is a very nice flop for pocket kings as we have an overpair to the board and are not worried about too much besides pocket queens and a spade coming on a future street. Keep in mind in 4-bet pots, ranges are extremely narrow. I will bet $90 and my opponent will call. We go to the turn and it's the deuce of hearts. It does not complete the spade draw or improve the obvious one pair hands that call the flop. I am more than happy to go all in on the turn for $360 with so many rivers that can ruin the action. Also, we have less than a pot size bet on the turn, so going for it all is perfectly fine on this wet of a board. After a couple of seconds, they put in a call. The river is the 8 of hearts. I turn over pocket kings, and then my opponent turns over ace queen of clubs. They 3-bet before the flop, called the 4-bet, made top pair, and had no choice to call in this spot on the turn. Maximizing value with your premium hands will help you build much larger pots, but the players across the table are still giving you information before those chips ever go into the middle. Watch this next video because noticing one of these changes can make your next difficult decision much easier.